What is up, guys? My name is Robert Donaldson, and once again, I am bringing you guys an Iowa football breakdown video because, I love Iowa football. I'm a big fan, and obviously, they are coming off of a massive win against Iowa State over the weekend, and now they are sitting at 2-0 with a favorable matchup in Week 3 as well against Western Michigan, and the season is really getting exciting. And the overwhelming question I've received since releasing that last video is, why does Iowa's running game suck? And that's a question that can be answered in several different ways, but let's start with the root of the problem here. The Brian Ferentz horse is a horse that has been beaten to hell throughout the Iowa fan base for years now. But when there's limited play action calls, when there's limited misdirection runs, and limited gap blocking concepts being implemented, defensive linemen, linebackers, corners, and safeties, they can all crash towards the play side in a hyper-aggressive fashion the second they see an interior offensive lineman move in a certain direction. Because in a zone running scheme, which Iowa runs, the linemen and the blockers are all moving in unison to the same side. And to keep this from being a zone run scheme tutorial video, which I don't want it to be, let's just keep it simple and leave it at that from a conceptual perspective in this video, so we can refer back to it a little bit later on. Now, to Brian Ferentz's credit, we've seen a lot more counter movement and gap blocking concepts being implemented early on this season. I mean, just take this play against Iowa State for example. Obviously, this was a massive run from Jazz Patterson early on in the game against Iowa State, and it was easily the biggest gainer on the ground for Iowa that day. And again, to Brian's credit, this is a misdirection run call in the form of a weak side counter or counter GH or whatever you really want to call it, as the right guard, Connor Colby, is pulling across the formation with the H-back or tight end, Eric All, coming alongside him. And obviously you see the counter footwork out of Jazz here as well, which really sells the flow to the right side. But look at what the movement of the offensive line does to the defense, as 6 of the 7 players lined up on the line of scrimmage for Iowa move in unison to the right in order to once again sell that zone run to the right that we had mentioned previously. And again, that's Iowa's base rushing attack, and every player on Iowa State's defense knows that, and every player on Iowa State's defense in this play, minus both safeties and the corner at the bottom of the screen, TJ Tampa, who is irrelevant to the start of this play, are the only players who don't get caught up in the trap of flowing to the strong side of the formation here. I mean, the linebacker number 33 right here completely runs himself out of the play, and the potential backside pursuit towards the strong side of the formation for Iowa is completely neutralized because they don't have a clue where the ball is at. And this is an excellent play call predicated on the understanding that Iowa State was playing undisciplined defensively in order to fill these running lanes against a zone rushing attack. And when you hear cliches like keeping a defense honest, this is exactly the type of play call that those people are referring to, because it forces the defense to take their time and take more inquisitive, slower steps towards the line of scrimmage rather than just completely selling out against a zone run to that play side. Now, with this play call in particular, don't get me started on the blocking from number 83, Eric All here, because if he does go vertical and doesn't attempt to cross Patterson's face in that running lane, this is a walk-in touchdown. But those are the small things that are eventually ironed out in film study, and it's not something I really think is worth dwelling on here. And as we transition, this is the same type of misdirection and quote-unquote keeping the defense honest that can also be applied in the passing game. And that's exactly what we saw with Iowa's biggest passing play of the day as well. And are you sensing a theme just kind of watching this video? Misdirection plays leading to success for Iowa's offense. In fact, the most success for Iowa's offense. And much like Jazz's run here, this play also took place in the first quarter. And once again, tip your cap to Brian Ferentz and give him some credit, because this is a beautiful play call, especially on 3rd and short, knowing your reputation as a running team. And with this one, the offensive line doesn't attempt to sell anything. And that's actually a good thing with this O-line because it really isn't good enough in pass pro to do anything above this in terms of pass protection. But it's actually the fake handoff element here that does a lot for this play call. As Iowa State safety Beau Freyler, who, if you guys have heard Iowa State fans talk about him being a great player, and I agree with that statement. I think he's a very good player, but he gets caught being undisciplined and watching the ball rather than fulfilling his responsibility, and his over-aggressiveness and his trying to get out in front of this potential zone run to the right is really what screws this play for Iowa State. I mean, just watching this play back, you can truly see the oh shit moment as tight end Luke Lachey is running full speed right on by him. And this play is just a beautiful sight to see because last year there is still a good chance that even with this separation and with this play call, that this pass gets airmailed, unfortunately. But with Cade McNamara in this offense, layup touch passes over the middle like this are going to be effective all year long. I mean, this is clockwork. This is something that should be completed almost every single time. And once again, the success on this play is found because of the predicated misdirection and quote unquote keeping a defense honest. And that's what every good offense at any high level of football is able to do successfully. Now, all that being said, we've picked some awesome plays in this video. And if these plays were happening every other drive or once even every 3 drives, we aren't having a conversation as to why Iowa's rushing attack is bad or why Brian Ferentz should be worried about scoring 25 points per game because a clause in his contract is there. Yet, here we are. And don't get me wrong, there are certain things to clean up execution-wise on the offensive line that would seriously elevate this offense as well, whether it be players missing assignments outright or players vacating a reach block where the block hasn't been secured yet and they are trying to move on to the second defender, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things. We could spend 20 minutes just purely talking about execution on the offensive line. But the root of Iowa's problem on offense comes down to elementary play calling and a predictable offense that doesn't implement enough of these plays that we've been watching in this video. I mean, there's a reason why I am showing you 2 plays that happened in the first quarter, because you really can't find any plays like this later on in the game, or they're few and far between. And man, you have to keep a defense honest, and Iowa's offense just doesn't do that well. I mean, that's why you hear a well-established coach like Dabo Swinney come out and talk shit about Brian Ferentz and his offense and how well it operates or how well it doesn't operate, because it's just not a good product. And given what we've seen from Brian play calling wise, like the 2 plays in this video, for example, it's baffling as to why this offense is as bad as it is, because he's truly shown us that it can be so much better and he can be so much better. And the fix to get it moving in the right direction is so easy, it's so apparent, and it's very easy to implement. And as a fan and as someone who likes a really good redemption arc, man, I am hoping he figures it out one way or another.